welcome to my very first speed build video. We're going to take a look at how I built this grandfather clock. It's also intended as a companion video for my kitbashing video, so if you want to see some of the tips and tricks that we did there in real time, then this is what we're going to do. Maybe chat a bit as well. This was actually one of the very first things that I kitbashed that I felt really satisfied with. Finishing this build made me feel like I'd actually worked out something about what this whole kitbashing thing was. And I actually completed it way back in December. So if you're paying attention, one of the things that you'll notice is that the gimbals are this old gold color. So thank goodness for colored gimbals now. It is so much easier to use them. I'm very glad that we now have them. But yeah, this video was made long enough ago that in my day, we had gold gimbals. I had always wanted to add a grandfather clock to this room. Obviously, the style and feel of the room is that old-timey kind of feel. I really wanted to add this in. This was where I actually did a good job of recognizing that I needed a reference image. So I'd actually gotten this tip from my sister. She'd started art classes, and one of the things her teacher had told her was you need reference images. You do not know what it actually looks like. You think you do, but you don't. So I had actually used reference images for this to help me get along. I'd also been going through and studying folks to work this out. I'd spent a whole bunch of time studying cottage wizard videos and building mouse videos, trying to work out how to do this kit bashing thing. So one of the things that you'll notice here is that my tip of going around and having a look at what other builders are doing, there's so much of it here that is actually taken from how they were using items. And I am incredibly grateful for the work that they had done to start off with to teach us all how to do this, because certainly I've been a person who has said, I have no idea how to see these objects other than exactly as they are. And so being able to watch them do it and how they'd applied things made a huge difference for me. One of the things that I've noticed as I've watched this video back is the order in which I do things, which is kind of weird, kind of fascinating. One of the things that you'll notice is that it's like, hey, I started with the middle of the clock. I got in a couple of these, what are going to be like metal strings for the clock. And then we're now starting to head to some of the decorations for the grate, which, yeah. So that advice that I give in the video about blocking out those key shapes, I certainly don't follow it here. Granted, it was something new for me to learn in that video. But I also think that I've worked out a little bit of why I approach things this way. I think for me, one of the reasons that I started here was because I didn't actually know if this was possible. If you get to the truth of it, I think I could probably work out the major shapes of the clock, but it was the detailing and all these extra parts that I was like, can I actually work out something that fits for this? So I have spent a lot of time not actually focusing on the major shapes and going into that detail to make sure that it was actually even possible, because I didn't know if it was. One of the things that you'll notice here is that I am spending a whole bunch of time working out how to do these little decorations. If I was doing this again, I would definitely work on the major weight first, because I spend a whole bunch of time here adjusting the angles, moving them around, working out what looks good. And I really think that if I'd put the major weight in first, I would have based these curves just off that major weight. It's an interesting thing for me to work out. I have not actually tried to do a serious kit bash since I've gotten this advice of blocking out the major shapes. I have a big question mark about whether I can do it or not, because one of the things that I found is that if you are following somebody else's process and it's not actually your own process, it doesn't fit with the way that your brain works, it doesn't always work out. So I am very keen to try to do this blocking out of the major shapes, but I don't have any guarantees as to whether it's actually going to work. So that is something that I'm looking forward to trying. But yes, as you can see here, we're spending so much time trying to adjust these little decorations that will end up at the top. I do really like these, and one of the things that I'm proud of for myself in making this decision is that if you look at some of the reference images here, there's nothing that I particularly matched. There's nothing that's exactly the same as this. I went for an overall look and feel and used what was available to me. And this was not something that I did consciously. It is part of the tips in the video, so I'm a little bit proud of myself for knowing that that was a appropriate way to approach things. It didn't have to be exactly the same as the image. As long as you were getting that general decorative feel, then that was going to work out well. Something else that I'm also super amused about here, and you'll see it all throughout the video, is that I am a massive cheapskate when it comes to dyes. So lots of people, when they're working with dyes, I feel like they do go all in and they'll dye their things happily, spend a lot of gold doing it. I'm always trying to be like, let's spend the least amount of gold I need on dyes. And to be honest, I'm the person that is still gathering these things from their garrison. So most days you will find me making a trip to the garrison so that I can pick those flowers and make my dyes for free. What that means is that throughout the entire video, you'll see tiny parts of things dyed. In this case, it's the bookshelf that's the back panel. I find that sometimes, even though I'm trying to save money on dyes and I want to make sure that I haven't dyed anything until I've committed, I don't really know how something looks until it is actually dyed. And particularly in this case, the thing that I'm trying to make happen is those wires that are coming down. And so I really did need to see how the gold of the rug sunk into that back wall and what it looked like and whether it would legitimately read as the wires that I was looking for. Looks like I get around to playing around with some other options. One of the things that I find quite fascinating about this, and I do this in a number of different places, is I'll go and experiment with other options for what a particular part looks like. So I'm just trying to work out, hey, is this the weight the way that it should be? Are there other options? And I'm always intrigued by the fact that you can do all of this exploration, and once you find the right thing, it feels like it's the perfect thing. And you almost forget what it was like having to make the decisions and working out what was actually working for you. Here it looks like I am doing something that I spent a lot of time trying to work out, which was what exactly is the correct height for these weights. This is another place where I think that if I had spent more time blocking out those main shapes at the start, I would have spent less time here, because really and truly what helped me understand how long those wires should be was adding in the rest of the base of the grandfather clock, which it looks like I'm starting to get that idea now, adding in a base that I know that I definitely don't end up with, but it is somewhere to start, which is definitely the name of the game. You might notice here that I'm doing a whole bunch of pausing, still playing around with the heights of things, matching them up, working it out. So yeah, we're getting that, we're making those decisions. I know that this isn't quite right yet in terms of where we end up, and also trying to adjust how everything fits together. One of the things that I spent a lot of time thinking about here is the fact that this is a clock that does actually have a function. So it is going to swing backwards and forwards, or at least it should look like it's possible that it can swing backwards and forwards. So I needed to be able to balance here that idea of how wide is it and where does everything fit within those panels. The other thing that I did here was that I made a decision that this thing needed to move, which, as you'll hear in the kitbashing video, this is something that I talk about. It is a really good idea to try to establish this sooner rather than later. If you don't establish it early, then you're potentially going to put yourself in for a lot of work as you reposition everything. This one wasn't too bad because I was just moving it left and right, and you could kind of just slide everything along, and so you've still got the vertical alignments that you need there to make it work. So this was not too bad. Looks like right now I am playing around with some investigations for the bottom of the clock. And this is something that I have noticed about myself in terms of how I do this build. So I am definitely not following a logical order in terms of the building structure here. I just added in a table that gave me the option for a clock face, but now I've gone back to the bottom. After spending a bunch of time watching this, I think the reason that I do this is because I get stuck. So I was working on the bottom before, I'd found one object, I knew that it didn't work, and so I went somewhere else. Added the clock face, I guess maybe just to check that, again, the dimensions would actually work with the rest of the build. But then I've gone back to, okay, what am I doing with the base? And I find this quite interesting because I don't mind these shapes. They're quite intriguing. I definitely didn't use any of them for the base of the clock, but they're kind of nice. And I have an idea to go back in and play with them a little bit and see whether they could be used elsewhere, maybe some detailing on the top. That's one thing that I would say that I didn't necessarily pay attention to for the reference videos is I got to the top of the clock and I was like, I am done. I had been working at this for ages. So keeping it simple, not adding too much to it was the name of the game. So these doors that we're adding, this was something that I really think changed the look of the clock. I think it's one of the things that makes it look so good. This was absolutely and definitely another trick that I had learned from Building Mouse, basically using these doors in the first place, though I'm not sure if I've seen anyone do it with the paneling. Could be wrong. You can let me know if I'm wrong. But this for me was something that I'd added to the build. It is something that I'm a big fan of, which is if you're seeing somebody else make something and you think it's really cool, I'm trying to not just 100% replicate what they're doing. I want to find a version that works for me, use it in a slightly different way. But I really do love the idea of getting inspiration from folks about the way that they build, which I guess is the reason for the entire kit bashing video in the first place. I think we're about to add another one of these crates that I have at the bottom. This, I would say, is a trick from Cottage Wizard. Yes, we're going to add another crate. One of the things that I really appreciate about watching Cottage Wizard's builds is that she always adds a bunch of extra details. So here I could have just added the one crate and it would have been a decent base. But by adding that second one, it's like now we've got a little drawer at the bottom of it, and it just adds another extra touch that really makes your build look put together. And you just saw me add some more dies in, again, because deciding whether these doors were going to work as this inlaid paneling for the metal surrounding the clock, I felt like I really needed the dies to be able to decide whether it was actually working. So looks like I finally, now that I've gotten the base in, gotten a lot more comfortable with this is the length that we're looking for these wires. One of the things that I appreciate about what is happening here, I don't think we're quite there yet, is, well, before we get there, this is something that I definitely recommend, which is taking a step back. I will spend a lot of time up close with the build, staring at the details, but you do want to take time to step back and have a look at it as a whole, because that's how most people are going to see it. They're not going to be up close and personal with it. So while that can help with working with it, you do want to be able to step back and actually see what it looks like. This is where I was headed, is that adjusting these wires was a really fun exercise in realizing that when you sync things, it changes what happens with resizing objects. So in this case, technically, resizing the object does make these wires thicker. But if I sync it into the wall, you can get it so that the widths are exactly the same. And so that means that instead, all I'm doing is making those wires longer, giving me more length. I'm not actually changing their width as long as I take the time to sync it into the back of the clock. So it looks like I've gotten stuck again, and instead moved on to a whole other detail of the clock, which I made with these cushions. Definitely an inspiration from Cottage Wizard with one of her early Tauren builds. These cushions are interesting in a couple of ways. So first of all, they are a good lesson in really being able to understand what is actually going into your object. When I looked at the clock images, I'd noticed that there was these thicker rods that were part of the image, but I didn't really actually understand what they were for. It was only later when I went back and I was like, oh, these are adjusting rods. So I did have to go back in and make some adjustments to how they looked in the clock. I think when I first built these, they were even in terms of their heights, but I adjusted the angle a little bit just to make sure that it looked like you were actually using these to adjust, perhaps wind the clock. To be fair, I am not an expert on clock operation, so I could be getting this wrong, but it's either to, adjust the timing or wind the clock up. You use it to mechanically wind them up. The other thing that's really interesting about these cushions is how they function when you dye them. Depending on how you rotated these cushions, the dyes look differently. The gleam is a little bit different, and then how they interact. So I'm spending a bunch of time here playing around with how the little patterns align with each other, but I think I completely change it by the end, because instead what I end up focusing on is not whether I can get these little lines to line up with each other, but more whether I can just get the dye to look consistent so that it looks like a relatively solid metal rod rather than being individual pieces. So this work that I'm doing right now is kind of wasted, but perhaps it's an opportunity for you to see, sometimes don't fuss about the details too much until you get those dyes in, because it could change the whole thing. One of the things that I do think is cool here is that I guess I am actually using the extrusion method here. So that repeating of objects to get a completely different shape. Absolutely not a specific technique that I was thinking of when I was doing this. For some reason, I didn't film the end of making this clock, so you'll get a bit of a walkthrough this way. Instead, we've used those doors with the hinges facing backwards, and the entire bottom of the clock is just a single mirror for decoration. And if you notice, they're all dyed the same color and they all look different. To cover the joins, I've also used mirrors, but these are literally 3 decor points each. So I'm gonna look at being able to do something a little bit different here. It is definitely the case that they help hide the seam that you would otherwise see. So I do like them, but I'd love to shrink the cost for them. And then once again, we start seeing all of the different dies that I have around the clock face. One of the things that I am proud of here is that apart from the fences that are used for the dials here, everything here comes from a vendor. Not bad for vendor items. This is why they're so powerful. You might also notice here that there's actually a gap between the back of the clock and the wall. I probably should add an extra crate, but no one's really going to go back there, so I didn't feel like it was necessary. You'll notice here that I'm also using those cushions that we were talking about, and one of the ones on the left is angled a little bit out so that you get this tiny little appearance of a chain to give it that uneven effect. One of the things I'm happy about with the clock face and the time is that this is actually 8 o'clock. I'd originally made it 4 o'clock, but the scene outside looks like it's midnight, so it felt like it was necessary to make sure that it was actually 8 o'clock instead of being 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There's the mug to act as a handle. We're trying to reduce the decor costs, so need to switch it down to the tiny filter and see what we can find. So really am trying to apply that approach that was suggested in the video of not going for the obvious things, have a look at what's there. But one of the quick realizations that I came to was that if you can't dye it, it's going to be difficult. This lovely shelf here is incredibly versatile. I think it gets used in so many different builds and can fit so many different little niche objects when you're looking for detail. I start playing around with it. It's a really good option. It fills the gap so nicely there, and I'll be able to dye it. So This is definitely looking like a good candidate. Yeah, and this is what it looks like with the dye. You can't really beat that. Now, obviously, this is a new form of video for me, so please do give me some feedback on how you think it went. I did want to have a go at adding that additional embellishment up top. Before we go quite there, I've got one more thing to add. One thing to note for the top of the clock is that the metal panels there are actually angled. So they're all on an angle, which means that when you sink them in and out, it changes the width of them. So just something to keep in mind if you were looking to replicate this. So yeah, I really did look at a whole bunch of options here. There were some that were terrible. There were some that almost did seem like they would work, but then, for example, here, I didn't like how it changed the color of the light in the room. So we went through many different options until I found this one. And this fence post here really did a convincing job of suggesting that maybe it would work. I even committed to dyeing the little top thing, but I'm still not sure. So you tell me, which one should I go with?